Good morning, everyone. We are up to Perek Yud, Mishna Aleph. Excuse me. So the Mishnah reads, Batzal shenasanai b'seich adoshim. That means an onion that was put into lentils. The case here is that we have a batzal, a truma onion, being put into lentils that are chulin, or the onion is chulin and the lentils are truma. You put the onion in and you took it out. There's nothing of the onion itself left in there. The question now is the following, and that is that we know that when things are cooked together, typically there is a transfer of flavor, of tam, that goes from one to the other. So now if let's say we deal with the case being that the onion is truma and the lentils are chulin. So you put the batzal, you put the onion in to the lentils. The question is, does the onion impart flavor into the lentils? If it does impart flavor into the lentils, then I have lentils of chulin together with truma flavor that's in there. We're talking about, and that would create a possibility of meduma, of a mixture of chulin and truma. We're not talking about the have 100 times here more. And therefore, the question is, what has now happened to those lentils? And so in the other case where the lentils are truma and the onion is chulin, you're going to have the same issue. But for our purposes, we'll just talk about from the point of the onion being truma. So the Mishnah says, im shalem muter. If let's say this onion is whole, then we say that everything is permissible. That means that as long as the onion stays whole, and we're talking about lentils, then we say that a whole onion in lentils does not impart flavor. That's the way things are. That's the facts. The lentils somehow or another insulate the whole onion, and therefore the whole onion doesn't impart flavor. If it's the truma, it doesn't absorb flavor from the lentils if they're truma, and it's chulin. Now, it has to be that it's complete. Also adds the Baratanura that the case is that the lentils have already been cooked and their moisture has already imparted. That is when we say that these lentils would be able to insulate the onion, and the onion does not impart flavor, nor would it absorb flavor. But if you're cooking the onion with the lentils, then even if it's whole, it's going to impart flavor, absorb flavor. So when the Mishnah says if it's complete, it's mutter, is talking specifically about after it has already been cooked. Now, another thing I just mentioned before is that typically we say that flavor gets is either given out or absorbed with heat. That's typical, and therefore, if our Mishnah is talking about the whole onion in the lentils, and the Mishnah is trying to tell us something novel, which is that even though they were together, they are permissible, then it should be talking about when it's hot, because that's the only time there's a transfer of flavor into something else. If it would be cold, nothing would be happening anyway, typically. And therefore, the case here in the Mishnah, according to commentaries, is talking about where they're both hot, or one of them is hot. Nonetheless, we say, let's keep it simple. Both of them are hot. Nonetheless, being that we're talking about lentils and a whole onion, there is no transfer of flavor from one to the other. But if let's say you cut this onion, okay, you cut the onion, and then we're talking, if the onion that was placed in the pot of lentils was cut, okay, if it was cut, if you cut it, then it all depends on whether it gives flavor into it or not. So again, we're talking about that the onion is the truma onion, and the lentils are chulin. So we're saying now, if the onion was cut, it's going to impart flavor. And now we got to figure out, is there a flavor now in these lentils? If there is no flavor in the lentils, then the flavor doesn't mean anything. It doesn't count. It's like it's not there. It's not going to affect the lentils. Lentils will be permissible. If it does impart flavor, then we have truma flavor mixed into this chulin, and we have meduma. So how do you figure out if there's the flavor there or not? So the answer is you go to a Kohen who can eat this no matter what. Even if it's meduma, even if it's a mixture of chulin and truma, he can eat it. And therefore, he's going to taste it. If he tastes onion in it, then we say that the truma onion imparted flavor into the lentils, and it's going to be forbidden. If it doesn't impart flavor, if he doesn't taste it, that means whatever flavor was imparted became nullified in the lentils, and therefore the lentils are permissible. If let's say the lentils are the one that are truma, he's got to taste the onion. If there's flavor of the lentils in the onion is then going to be forbidden to non-Kohanim. If it doesn't impart any flavor, if there's no flavor in there because the flavor became nullified in the onion, basically we say that the flavor, it's the times where the flavor just kind of, dissipates. It spreads within the food and it dissipates. If that's what happens, then we say that it's like the flavor is not here and the onion is going to be fine, even to non-Kohanim. Now, there hasn't been much discussion, right? Okay, so it all depends on whether it gives flavor or not. Now, when we typically talk about, things giving flavor to other things like kosher and non-kosher meat and milk, we talk about 60 times more. In essence, it could work either way by those things. If you could find, let's say, a guy to taste it, then you would say, then he could figure out whether there's flavor there or not. If you don't have a guy to taste it, then you go by 60. By truma, you don't go by 60. By truma, we go by 100. So what's interesting is, because I don't see any mentioning here of 60 in the commentaries, but it is pointed out in the Yad Avram that we said before that if, let's say, truma grain gets mixed into chulin, truma grain and chulin grain get mixed together, then you need 100 times of the chulin to nullify the truma. A majority doesn't help. 60 times doesn't help. You need 100 times. Here we're saying there isn't 100 times more, but just figure out, is there flavor there or not? Find the kind to taste it. Is there flavor there? And the explanation and the difference is that you need 100 when it's two of the same type. When basically, let me read it to you though. Although we learned that truma does not become nullified unless it is mixed with 100 times the amount of chulin, that applies to truma and chulin of the same type of food. Excuse me. But here, since the onion and the lentils are different types of food, nullification is dependent on taste. So if we're talking about different types of food, there is no real, the way I would understand it is, there's no mixture of the objects. It's the flavor that we're dealing with. So then we have to figure out if the flavor been nullified or not. I mention of 60 here in this kind of case, but we do talk about the Kohen tasting it. Like I said before, by other things, it works by either a guy tasting it or 60 times more. I haven't seen any mention of the 60 times here, so I'm not sure what to do about that. But here, when we're talking about two different types of food, it's a question of the flavor being imparted, then it works, and then if the flavor is nullified, then it doesn't affect. We're talking about just two foods, two grains getting mixed together, and we can't tell the difference between them. And it's the question is, okay, not a question of flavor here. It's a question here of the grain and the grain. How much grain do I have here? There, the sages said you have to have 100 times more. Okay, so this is the first half of the Mishnah that's dealing with the onion in the lentils. And we're going to see that this is very specific. We're talking about onion, a whole onion in lentils. Usha'ar kala tabshal. What about, we're talking about other foods. Bein shalom bein mechutach, whether they are whole, whether they are cut up. B'nois and tam, then already it works with nois and tam, then it works with the flavor, whether the flavor has been left there. Now, if we're talking about, first we got to establish what does it mean, all other foods. So according to the Bar Tanura, the Tanura says, if let's say other foods got mixed into lentils, meaning we spoke about an onion getting mixed into lentils. How about if we're talking about something else like garlic, like what other food? Leek. Let's say that's the food that fell into the lentils. Then the Mishnah says, whether they're whole, whether they're cut up, the halacha is it all depends on the flavor they impart. Now, we will be talking about here where, just want to make sure I see this. Okay, fine. In the case where we're not talking about an onion into lentils, we're talking about other foods into lentils. So even if other foods are going to be whole, then they do impart flavor. And you're going to have to check out is the flavor there or not. Others explain that the cooked food is not going on the onion, it's going on the lentils. Meaning, let's say it's an onion in other foods, not other than lentils. There too, we're going to say where the onion is whole, where the onion was cut up, it's going to impart the flavor into the food, and therefore you have to check, has the flavor been nullified or not? Rabbi Yehuda mater b'tzachana. Rabbi Yehuda permits, if we're talking about tzachana, we'll explain what that means soon, because the whole purpose there is to take away the odor. Tzachana is some kind of a fish dish that has a bad smell. And you would add an onion to this to take away its smell. So Rabbi Yehuda says that it's going to be permissible in the case of an onion, which means right. Even though we're talking about, just 1 second, please. Right. Okay. We just said, if you put the onion into other food, then whole doesn't make any difference. It's going to impart flavor into the food. Rabbi Yehuda says, if we're talking about tzachana, which is kind of a cooked fish, which gives off a bad odor, so then if you put the onion of truma into that fish, then you take out the onion and the tzachana is permissible. As long as the onion remains whole, that nothing fell apart and got mixed into this fish. Because as the Mishna says, the batzal is only there to remove the smell, not to give flavor. Okay, so what do we have here? We've got this tzachana, a cooked fish prepared in a certain way. It's got a bad smell. The way you remove the smell is by adding an onion. Now, the onion was, if we're talking about an onion of truma that was now put into this fish dish, and it was there to remove the foul odor. So we say, as Bartanura says, if it's whole, didn't fall apart, didn't come apart, it's whole. Then you take it out, this fish will be permissible. Why? Because it wasn't put in there for flavor, it was put in there to remove the odor. So the question is, so what? So what if it was removed? It's there to remove the odor. But as we said until now, if you put an onion into a different food, it's going to absorb the flavor of the onion. So the truma flavor has gone to the fish. It should be necessary to determine, is the flavor of the fish there or not? Why are the Rabbi Yehuda saying that since it's only their purpose was there to remove the foul odor, so therefore it's okay? What do you mean it's okay? There's truma flavor in here. We've got truma in here. How can you eat it? So the way that the Yad Avram explains, he brings that explanation in the following way. And that Rabbi Yehuda says that the purpose there is to remove the foul odor, what it really means to say is like this. You're not putting that onion in there for flavor, because actually it's not good for the flavor of the fish. Here, let me read it to you from here. The Mishna Rishon explains that the flavor of the onion is detrimental to the taste of the fish, even though it improves its odor. Funny situation. It's got a bad smell. You can add an onion because you want to get that smell, rid of that smell. But the onion basically damages the flavor of this fish. And we have a rule. No saying tal begam, when a flavor is detrimental to the food that it goes into, that it doesn't have any effect then. It's not considered like we have the food there. Only time flavor is considered like I have the food is if it improves, if it does something, if it adds something to the food. But if it ruins the food, if it's detrimental to the food, it ruins the flavor of the food, even to some degree, then we say that it's not like the food itself and it has no effect. So therefore, the meaning of Rabbi Yehuda is that when you put this onion into the fish, it's there for the odor. It's not there for flavor because it's detrimental to the flavor. So its flavor it plays no issue here. That's the meaning what Rabbi Yehuda says in the case of the onion and the tzachna and this fish, that we say, well, it's there only to remove the foul odor. It's not there for taste because it doesn't help the taste. It's only there to remove the odor. Since it's not doing it's actually detrimental to the taste, therefore it does not affect the fish. The Bartanura says the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda, which means Tanakama argues on this. What the argument exactly is, I'm not sure. How to explain the first opinion, perhaps it doesn't ruin the fish flavor that much to be considered a detrimental flavor. But according to what the Bartanura learns, Tanakama does not agree with Rabbi Yehuda about this case of the onion in the fish, and therefore it too would depend on whether flavor of the onion is important to the fish or not. Okay. Excuse me. Mitzvah Sloisase, a prohibition, Shalilbaish Beged Mitzemer Pishtim, not to wear a garment made out of wool and linen. Shanamar Loisilba Shatnes, you shall not wear shatnes, which is translated as a mixture. A garment of a mixture, Tzemer Pishtim Yachtav, of wool and linen together. Vazanikra Kile Begadim. This is referred to in Mishna as Kile Begadim, the mixture of garments. Tzemer, when the Torah says the word tzemer, which translates as wool, hu tzemer rechelim ve'elim dafka. This is specifically the wool of sheep or rams. That's the only wool that falls under the word tzemer. That's the only type of wool that's going to have this prohibition of shatnez. Keven shenischaber tzemer upishtim tzad chibur ba'olam. Once we have wool and linen being combined in some form of connection, asa mishum kalayim and atayra, that is the kalayim, the mixture prohibition of the Torah. From loash kalayim, and if a person wears kalayim, afilo arai, even temporarily, afilo al gabi asara begadim, even if he's wearing it on top of 10 other garments, shenemaneu klum, that it doesn't give him any kind of benefit. He doesn't. It's not giving him worth, it's not giving him comfort. He doesn't even feel it. Even if the only reason you did it was to be able to get past the customs inspection, to get past having to give taxes. And again, in a situation where you're allowed to do that. You have transgressed this prohibition. So too, let's say you're not wearing it, but you're covering stuff with it. You transgress this prohibition. And rabbinic based on and according to rabbinic law, it is forbidden to sit on mats of kilayim, of shatnez. You're not wearing it, you're sitting on it. Even if we're talking about 10 soft spreads, one on top of the other, and the bottom one is kilayim, it's forbidden to sit on the uppermost one. This is not wearing, it's not basically a situation where a big part of you're not wearing it, you're not covering it yourself with it, you're just sitting on it. But sitting on it also provides a certain amount of comfort and warmth. And therefore, the sages said that is forbidden to do. And it's forbidden to do even if the spread or the mat that's made of shatnez is all the way on the bottom. Nonetheless, we say it's usher to sit on them. This applies in all places at all times, both by men and by women. I just want to tell everyone that tomorrow, being Erev Rosh Hashanah, the class will not be at 8 o'clock. The class will be scheduled for 9:15. So again, tomorrow the class is at 9:15 Erev Rosh Hashanah. Take care. Have a wonderful day.